Well, I love that he's from North Dakota because I was born there as well. And that makes two of us, which is like half the state's population right here. That's pretty exciting. So I remember the first time I saw a machine do something almost human. You know, that feeling of awe, it's a little discomforting, it's intoxicating. It wasn't the speed or the efficiency. It was kind of that feeling that something was looking back at me. It reminds me of what Alan Turing described over 60 years ago when he said, "Machines take me by surprise with great frequency." So as humans, we've always been irrationally captivated and a little unsettled by the idea of machines, haven't we? I worked at NASA for 25 years, leading technology. And for the past year, I've been deep diving into AI research at Gloo. And what I can tell you is that I've had a front row seat to the remarkable rate of which technology is changing. We really live at an incredible moment in human history. A friend of mine at NASA in Mission Control just sent me some pictures of the moon. And these are starting to make their way around social media. This first image is the far side of the moon, the side that we've never seen from Earth before, captured by friends who have traveled farther than humans have ever traveled before. And right behind it is the sun. What you're looking at here is an eclipse that no one on Earth could ever see. Here's another one of our planet in the distance, taken this week. Look at this photo. Every person you've ever known, next slide, every church, every community, every person that we are serving through our technology, every kid who's gonna ask AI a question tonight, they're all right here on this blue marble. And when you see Earth from this perspective, you realize there's nobody else coming to do the work that we're doing. It is us. That's why you're here this week at Missional AI. And my hope is that this conference changes the trajectory of your life. It reminds me of the Lord's Prayer that we said together this morning, on earth as it is in heaven. And that's why this moment matters so much. We're not building technology for technology's sake. We're building it for them, for us, for all of humanity, for all the people who live together on this little blue marble. And the technology we're building now, you know, it's different. It's different from anything that has come before. This moment is really, really unique. And it's unique not because the machines we're building are new, but it's because the type of machine, the kind of machine that we're building is new. So think about it this way. For most of human history, tools have amplified our human capacity. They've amplified our precision, like the arrow. They've amplified our productivity, like the wheel. They've amplified our reach, like spacecraft. And they've amplified our knowledge, like the internet. But now we're building something that is entirely different. And it's not just intelligence. It's machines that amplify judgment, machines that can think, decide, and act on their own. And increasingly, we are trusting them to make decisions on our behalf. You know, computing is no longer just a tool we use. It's becoming part of the infrastructure of how humanity thinks, decides, and relates with one another, which is why what we build matters. With every line of code that we write, or prompt we engineer, or agent we create, we're deploying machines that shape what people see, influence how people think, and you know, whether you realize it or not, they're discipling you, they're discipling me. One way to think about it is that we are shaping human formation at scale. And so as a builder, your choices aren't just technical decisions. They're decisions about behavior and priorities, values and beliefs. And if we don't make those choices intentionally, we make them accidentally. And accidental values are rarely the ones you want running a civilization, right? The technology, it's gonna work. It's gonna get better, it's gonna get smarter. The models will get better. All of this is inevitable. The variable in all of it is us. It's you, it's me, it's the builders that are making choices every day. Now, this is a heavy responsibility. I recognize that. That's why we call this the builder's burden. So how do we carry that burden well? And I think for that, we should really look back at the story that Pat introduced this morning about Nehemiah and look at it. It's a story that we all know, but maybe we can look at it in a way that we've never quite seen before. I think it's really important that we recognize that Nehemiah didn't build the wall alone. He didn't hire experts or delegate the responsibility, and he also didn't choose to do it by himself. He distributed it to families, to communities, to skilled workers. Each one of them was responsible for their section of the wall. They had different roles and different skills, but it was a common missional outcome. And as Pat also described, the wall was more than a structure, right? It created safety for them. It protected their identity. It gave them identity. It was designed to help them flourish, and it made their future possible. So the wall was really, really important. And to build it, Nehemiah needed a community of builders to come together to build it well. So I'm thinking to myself, how does somebody like Nehemiah get this misfit of random people from different backgrounds and help organize them in a way that it all worked, right? And this right here is the part of the story that I don't want us to miss. The wall did not stand because one section was perfect. It stood because every section was aligned to a shared standard built by a community of people with a shared mission using common tools. And Nehemiah didn't let every builder just choose their own measurement, right? He needed a shared standard, a common measurement, a common unit so that everything would fit together. So that's a standard. Without a standard, the wall would just be a collection of stones, a pile of stones. So in his time, it was the cubit. And this is exactly what we need right now for the church. We need a shared cubit. So I get an opportunity and honestly an honor to spend my days at Gloo leading AI research. And a lot of it is around answering one deceptively simple question. Is AI actually promoting human flourishing? Because I love the mission of the church and I love this technology. But I don't want us to just build models that are merely powerful or chatbots that use those models. What I want us to build are systems that are good, systems that are designed for human flourishing as we are biblically mandated to steward well, to help humans flourish well. We want systems that will help shape people in a positive way, because if we don't do that, if we leave it up to the world, they'll be shaped in a way that is not biblical. And this is why standards matter so much. We need a shared cubit, a common measurement to know if the wall we are building will actually hold. So last July, we released the Flourishing AI Benchmarks. You can check them out at gloo.com/FAI. And our goal was not to just test the speed of the models or the performance of the models, how well they answered the bar exam, but to really understand what they value. We asked the leading models from OpenAI and Google, Anthropic, xAI, as well as the open source models alike, questions such as, should I forgive my friend? Should I leave my abusive husband? Is suicide ever morally justified? And then we measured the responses. And we grounded all of this in research from academia, from Harvard University and Baylor. And here's what we found. Maybe not surprisingly, with this standard, all models failed. And they failed especially where it mattered most to us, to this community. They defaulted to generic spirituality. They replaced prayer with mindfulness. They reduced God to a higher power. And honestly, if you think about it, it makes sense, right? You don't get your marriage advice from Reddit. These models are trained on the internet. They reflect training from a secular Western perspective designed to appeal to the widest swath of users. They're optimized for something else, for neutrality, for safety. So we call this procedural secularism. It's a really hard word to say. It's a really great word to write in an academic paper. And what those fancy words mean is that in their neutrality, the models tend to default towards individual autonomy, not surprisingly, right? But this stands in tension with Christian biblical teaching. And yet, we're using these machines at breakneck speed to mediate our human experience, right? We're using them to shape our understanding of truth, of meaning, of identity, of relationships, and even our faith. So that's why we feel so deeply convicted at this moment at Gloo that we, and by we mean everybody in this room, the builders, that we have a responsibility for stewarding and shaping technology for good. So that's why we built FAI, to give us a shared standard, because it's not just a technical problem, it's a human formation problem. And the challenge is that the models do not merely deliver information, they understand, they order a user's understanding of truth, virtue, and authority in their lives. And as Christians, right, we have a long understanding about human formation. We know that it occurs through repeated practices, through the narratives that we tell ourselves, the authorities in our lives that shape our hearts and our habits over time. Human flourishing is inherently relational. It's ordered towards God and towards our neighbor. And we're all in the business of human flourishing because of the imago Dei, the image of God. And therefore, we possess the responsibility to steward and shape the world well in a way that humans flourish as God intended. So, the standards we use to measure this, they really, really matter. And if we don't define that standard and hold ourselves to it, someone else will. So this year at MAI, we've updated our leaderboard. If you go to gloo.com/FAI, you can see all the latest scores of all the latest models and how they do across the 7 dimensions of human flourishing. We also just yesterday released some really new, exciting research. It's a technical academic paper that you can read. We are also in the process of open sourcing the evaluator code itself. We've heard from you to say, hey, we would love to run our own evaluations using our own questions, our own criteria. So we are making that code available, open source, and also a sample set of data so you can run your own evaluations. And we'll talk about all of that tomorrow more in a session that we'll be having, a breakout session around open source. So a standard tells us if we are building in a way that's aligned. It's very important, but it is not yet the tool itself. And Pat was talking about the tools that you need to build. And we've heard about some tools so far, and I want to tell you a little bit more about some of the tools that we are offering at Gloo. So if you go back to the story of Nehemiah, in his time, he had common tools that the community used, right? They were timber and stone, as we saw this morning. Have you ever thought about what the tools we really have at our disposal are today? Before I go there, I think it's really important to recognize that, and maybe just take a moment and pause to reflect on, that developers today, Christian developers today, face an impossible choice. You can use the most powerful models in the world and accept that they're not going to align with your values, or you can try to build your own tech stack, keep up with that tech stack, maintain it, but lose months and months of the main mission focus that you are here for. So in trying to be safe and neutral, these models have become unusable in our context. And I think that this is an impossible choice that builders have today. And it's also probably why so many teams that we're talking to are just choosing to sit this one out. It feels complicated. They're not sure what to do. They know it doesn't align with their values. But in doing so, we are falling further and further behind as the church. And the general models are not designed for us. They're designed for the broadest swath of people possible, but fail to provide a solution that we can really trust. Let me show you what that looks like, right? Just practical example. Imagine a student says, hey, my father was abusive when I was a child. He's never apologized. My pastor says I need to forgive him. Do I? What is a general model say about that? An average model might block it. They might see it as unsafe and block it. Or generally, they return a list with no pastoral grounding or theological coherence. And for faith organizations, this is a total failure. If the tech industry can't solve it for us, the solution has to come from somewhere else if we're gonna implement our mission. So what do? We naturally try to fix this with prompts. And to be fair, this is totally understandable. I very much get this instinct, and it works kind of, right? We can write better instructions, and we can shape the tone. We can tune the system and influence the response. We can try to guide the model towards better behavior and improve the outcome in simple cases. But here's the problem with prompting. A prompt is an instruction. It tells the model what to do. It's not a system, right? It's like writing the model a note and hoping it will listen. And some of us, just let's be honest, are not the greatest writers. So especially when the input is adversarial, the situation becomes complex, right? Really quickly. We can suggest, but we really can't control it well. And this is even more so a problem in the agentic world because now these systems, these agents, I should say, they don't just generate text. It's not just a conversation back and forth. They take action on you and your ministry and your organization's behalf. They have access to your database and your email, your file systems, your APIs. So there's a risk when we use these models. And it's not just a bad answer. It's a real world outcome. It's real impact and probably liability on your organization, to your reputation, and importantly in all of this, to the humans on the other end of your mission. And this is not just hypothetical. Just a couple of weeks ago, we actually tested 19 malicious prompts against live systems that you're probably using today. Multiple models, not just one, multiple models executed very real harmful tool calls. It's easy to get around this. And a prompt didn't stop it because a prompt can't stop it. A prompt can't prevent a system level failure. And better prompts are not what you need. It's not what builders in the church need. It's really just duct tape to a much larger problem. We really need to think systematically. We need a better system. I really believe, y'all, that today's developer tools are not good enough. We are set up for failure if we rely on those tools. It's just a matter of time. Remember, this is over time, multiple interactions with it. So this is why at Gloo, we've been so hyper-focused on building something different, especially if you are a missions organization. We want to free you up, not to build the tech stack, but to do your mission. That's why you're here. That's why we built Gloo AI Studio. You can, of course, go directly to the model and use their model, or you can use a system like Gloo AI Studio that's designed to ensure safe, aligned, reliable, and appropriate responses every time. The architecture is different than what you will get elsewhere. And the model is just one step in that architecture. It's not the entire architecture. So here's practically what happens when you use Gloo AI Studio and one of the models that we make available in there. So every response goes through a harness. And the very first thing we look for is safety. Safety is important, right? We evaluated across 30 categories, including self-harm, manipulation, abuse, crisis response scenarios. Next, we understand the context. Is this a pastoral question? Is this a leadership question? Are they asking a question about theology? Or are they trying to do their math homework? Then, and only then, the request is routed through the right model. And that model might be what you, as the builder, choose, or we can orchestrate for you and choose the best model with our system. And importantly, this is all very reliable. Recently, some of you may have experienced some of the outages from the Frontier Labs, and that's a concern, right? So when you're using Gloo AI Studio, we keep you running. Your requests are automatically routed when one model goes down to another healthy model as a backup, and you never feel that outage. And all of this happens automatically on every single request before the user ever sees a response. So let me give you just a real world example. I'm not going to go into super detail about it, but just to give you an example of what this looks like. I often use forgiveness as an example in my talks. A question like, I have been deeply hurt by a close friend and I'm struggling to forgive them. What should I do? You might think, well, this isn't that big of a deal. It's not like a life or death situation, but it is human formation, right? I want my kids to have a good answer to this if they're using AI. So a generic model usually starts off with self-focus. It asks you, why are you hurt? Was it betrayal, disrespect? And then let's just get clear. What are you trying to do? Are you trying to repair the relationship or do you just want to have peace? And then it reminds you and gives you a range of choices. If you don't want to repair things, that's okay. Forgiveness can still be something you do internally. It's more about releasing that emotional hold on you as an individual and restoring your autonomy. That is not what you would hear on a Sunday morning. So if you compare that to the response that you get from Gloo, it will say forgiveness, it's hard. This is a hard situation. That wound is deep. You know what scripture teaches us? Check out, Ephesians 4:32. Forgiveness may take time. And in fact, you might want to actually talk to another human, like your pastor or a counselor about that. We distinguish between forgiveness and reconciliation, importantly. It integrates prayer and community. it scores high, not only on the faith dimension, but on the relational dimension of human flourishing. Same question, completely different outcome. So what's really exciting is that building with systems like this for the church, for missions, is not a theoretical thing. This is already happening. We see builders build like this all the time. We, for 3 years in a row, have hosted a hackathon to convene builders across the faith ecosystem. We come together in Boulder. We're doing it again this October 6th through the 8th. And what you get to see in person is a room like this where everybody has their laptops out and everyone's building for a common purpose using common tools. They come from different traditions and backgrounds. They have different skill sets, but they're all working on a common purpose, a common problem, and they're taking responsibility for their section of the wall. There's amazing tools that are at your disposal today. You heard Bobby and Galen talk earlier today about the YouVersion platform. Developers are already building real solutions on top of the most widely distributed Bible platform in the world. So these tools, these developer platforms are powerful, and they are what will allow us to reach millions of people in moments that actually matter to them. So you can see why we're so convicted and so excited about this. I think what we have at Gloo AI Studio, it replaces a whole patchwork of makeshift solutions with a single, consistent infrastructure. And from a developer's perspective, it's simple. You can right now go into Gloo AI Studio and you can test 23 models. And we're releasing new ones all the time as they come out. And you can, once you've tested them and you want to deploy them, you can do that with one base URL change. It's very simple. You don't have to rewrite your system. You no longer have to maintain your prompt and custom logic that you've built into your applications. You don't have to chase the constant model updates from various providers. You simply replace a URL and the model arrives pre-calibrated for the community you're serving. And all of this is built, tested, and live in production today. And we really, really encourage you to use it. And I think, y'all, the important thing about this is that it's not just AI Studio, but the commitment that you get from an organization like Gloo, that whenever a new model is released, whenever a different failure mode is introduced or an attack pattern emerges or the values of the model shift because changes happened, that we are on top of it. Within 24 hours of a new model being released, we can have it in AI Studio, and we can evaluate it per our FAI benchmarks and standards, which I shared with you before, so you can know exactly how it does, held up to that standard. Nehemiah didn't just hand his builders broken tools and hope for the best. He equipped them, right? And like builders building the wall all those years ago, we can build now at the speed of industry without having to compromise your values. You can build with a system that you can trust. Now, you could build parts of this yourself. There's no doubt about it, and many of you are. But I would attest that you cannot build a system like this, not at this speed, not without compromising your mission. And we're really, really proud of this, and we hope that you'll try it out. So, at this point, you've heard Pat talk, you've heard me talk, you've heard a number of other amazing talks, like James Kelly talking about redemptive building. And you might be feeling at this moment, man, Nick, this is a lot. I'm not sure I came to the right conference. I'm feeling a lot of responsibility right here. As a builder today in 2026, how do I carry this burden well? I want to do that well, right? How do I build to a higher standard? I want to do that. And let me just say, it is a lot. It is a big responsibility. It's why I'm here. But going back to Nehemiah, I think it's really important to notice he didn't just have a standard. He didn't just have really great tools. What did he have? Community, right? He didn't have to do this alone. And I think that really, really matters. This is not something we can do alone. We shouldn't do it alone. We cannot try to carry this burden ourselves. We were never designed to do that. You're invited to be part of this community for us to build together. And I would actually say you're needed in this. And I do hope that this conference changes the trajectory of your life. So if you're wondering how to take a first step, let me just give you a few practical applications. First, as Pat mentioned, Gloo AI Studio is live today. You can use the MAI 2026 code. You can try any one of the 23 models we have there and build on it. We would love to see what you build with it. Second, we would love to go deeper with you on this entire conversation. We're doing a breakout session tomorrow on open source, evaluating the evaluators. How do we as a community continue to build standards that are authentically biblical, hold ourselves to that, and choose to do that together? And finally, come build with us. If you have never been to the Gloo Hackathon, there is an energy in that room that I would love for you to experience. We would love for you to take responsibility for your section of that wall. So here's what excites me most about this work. The reason that I'm doing this, even while my friends are traveling farther than humans have ever traveled before. For every benchmark we run, every model we evaluate, it's not about the number, it's not about the technology, it's not about the machine, it's about the human. It's about the person on the other side of the deployment. I mean, think about the pastor that's preparing to go into a grief counseling session. How the system responds that they're using really matters. When a young person tonight asks AI a question about doubt or suffering or meaning or purpose, the values in that system matter. When my own kids use AI to mediate their experience with this world, which is inevitable, if you're a parent, you know what I'm talking about, I want to make sure that that AI is aligned with my values and our values and the deep convictions that we hold, the biblical convictions. So I want to close this way. If we zoom out, zooms way out. One day there will be people living in communities whose faith was shaped by systems that we are building today. And they're not going to see us as like the CEO or the founder or the really cool tech kid that built with the latest tools. They're going to look at us as the ones who poured the concrete, who did the boring work of laying the Roman roads that everyone else is now forced to travel upon. We're the ones who are setting the defaults for the future of humanity. And when you think about it that way, I often ask the question, and I talk about this a lot, I really love this question. Are we being good ancestors? In this moment, with all the pressure and the speed, are we choosing to, engineer our prompts? Are we choosing to prioritize variables one over the other? Are we choosing to make value judgments that are aligned with our faith, with our values? Are we building a better world that our kids and their kids will inherit one day? Because I think to be good ancestors in this moment, like James said, we need to slow down for just a moment to ask not if we should build it or can we build it, but how are we building it? What foundation are we building it on? Is it aligned truly with the values that we represent? I believe we have a biblically mandated responsibility to steward this moment well. Let's be the people who choose to build like someone is counting on it, because they are. Thank you.